Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening The Unexpected Visitor. Dr. Sarah Chen had always dreamed of first contact, but not like this, not with an alien materializing in her kitchen at 3 a.m. while she was stress-eating leftover pad thai in her Star Wars pajamas. The being appeared in a shower of purple sparks, hovering a few inches above her linoleum floor. Sarah's fork clattered to the counter as she stared, noodles dangling forgotten from her mouth. The creature, humanoid but clearly not human, regarded her with eyes that sparkled like diamonds, its translucent skin rippling with patterns of bioluminescence. "Greetings, Dr. Sarah Chen," it said in perfect English, though its mouth didn't move. The voice seemed to form directly in her mind. "I am Zara, senior researcher of the Lumerian Science Institute. I apologize for the unconventional arrival, but our situation is rather urgent." Sarah slowly chewed and swallowed her noodles, buying time to process. Her years of astrobiological research had prepared her for many scenarios, but none had covered proper first contact etiquette while wearing Yoda slippers. "Would you like some pad thai?" she offered weakly, gesturing to the takeout container. Zara's skin rippled with what might have been amusement. "Thank you, but I do not require sustenance in your traditional form. Though I am fascinated by the concept of stress eating. Our data suggested you might be awake at this hour due to your irregular work patterns. You've been studying me?" Sarah's scientific curiosity began to override her shock. "For how long? And why me specifically?" "For approximately 2.7 of your Earth years," Zara replied, finally settling onto the floor. Their form solidified somewhat, becoming less ethereal, but no less alien. "You were chosen because of your groundbreaking work on extremophile adaptation in hostile environments. Your paper on genetic manipulation for survival in extreme conditions was particularly relevant to our needs." Sarah felt a flush of pride before reality caught up. "Wait, how did you even read my paper?" "It was only published in..." "Your internet is not as secure as you believe," Zara interrupted smoothly. "But that is irrelevant to our current situation. Dr. Chen, my people need your help. We are facing an unprecedented crisis that threatens our entire species." Sarah pulled up a kitchen stool, her scientific mind already racing with possibilities. "Tell me everything." Over the next hour, Zara explained how the Lumerians, a species that had evolved to exist primarily as beings of light and energy, were facing extinction due to their sun's unexpected acceleration toward a premature death. Their biological ability to shift between solid and energy states, once their greatest evolutionary advantage, was becoming increasingly unstable as their star's radiation changed. "We need to adapt, and quickly," Zara concluded. "Your research suggests possibilities we hadn't considered. The combination of your understanding of biological adaptation and our knowledge of energy matter conversion could be the key to our survival." Sarah's mind whirled with the implications. "But why come directly to me? Why not approach governments, major research institutions?" Zara's skin darkened momentarily, patterns swirling in what Sarah was beginning to recognize as emotional expressions. "We have observed your species' tendency toward political complications in matters of extraterrestrial contact. We believed a more personal approach would be more productive." "That's one way to put it," Sarah muttered, thinking of every sci-fi movie where first contact had gone horrifically wrong. "But what exactly are you proposing?" "A collaboration," Zara said, their form brightening. "We have established a research facility in a remote location, shielded from detection. We need your expertise, Dr. Chen. We need your human perspective on biological adaptation and survival. In exchange, we offer you access to knowledge and technology beyond anything your species has yet imagined." Sarah should have felt overwhelmed. She should have been skeptical, cautious, maybe even afraid. Instead, she felt an increasing sense of excitement. This was everything she'd ever worked for, a chance not just to study alien life, but to help save it. "I have conditions," she said firmly, surprising herself with her own certainty. "First, I need to verify everything you've told me. I want data, proof, not just of your situation, but of your intentions. Second, I want guarantees that any discoveries we make will benefit both our species, not just yours. And third, she glanced down at herself and couldn't help smiling. I need to change out of these pajamas. Zara's skin rippled with patterns that somehow conveyed both amusement and respect. Your terms are acceptable, Dr. Chen. Though I must note that your current attire has provided valuable cultural insights. As Sarah went to change, her mind raced with possibilities. She should have been terrified, but instead she felt more alive than she had in years. This was real. This was happening. First contact had occurred in her kitchen over leftover pad thai, and it felt somehow perfect. When she returned, properly dressed and with a hastily packed bag, she found Zara examining her collection of scientific journals with apparent fascination. Your species' method of information storage is charmingly physical, they observed. Are you ready to proceed to the facility? Sarah took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and nodded. Just one more question, will there be coffee where we're going? Because I have a feeling I'm not going to want to sleep for a while. Zara's skin flashed with what was definitely amusement this time. We have already stocked the facility with what our research suggested were optimal conditions for human cognitive function. Including, yes, something called a premium espresso machine. Then what are we waiting for? Sarah grabbed her bag. Let's go save your species. As Zara's energy field expanded to envelop her, Sarah had one last thought. Her department chair was going to be really confused by her absence request form. The world dissolved in a shower of purple sparks, and Sarah Chen, Ph.D., began her journey from earthbound scientist to humanity's first ambassador to the stars. It wasn't how she'd imagined first contact would go, but as the universe had a way of teaching its students, the most important discoveries often came in the most unexpected packages. All she knew for certain was that nothing, not her years of research, not her countless simulations of alien encounters, not even her extensive collection of science fiction novels, had prepared her for what would come next. But then again, that was exactly why she'd become a scientist in the first place, to face the unknown and turn it into knowledge. As her atoms reassembled at their destination, she was already formulating her first 1,000 questions. After all, she had a new species to save, and if there was one thing Dr. Sarah Chen knew how to do, it was solve impossible problems. She just hoped the coffee was as good as Zara promised. It was going to be a very long night. The research begins. The facility materialized around Sarah like a dream, taking solid form. Her first coherent thought was that it looked nothing like she'd expected. Instead of sterile white walls and chrome fixtures, she found herself in what appeared to be a vast greenhouse dome, filled with an impossible array of earth and alien flora coexisting in strange harmony. Welcome to Interface Station Alpha, Zara announced, their crystalline form refracting the artificial sunlight into rainbow patterns across the vegetation. We believed a more organic environment would facilitate optimal human comfort while maintaining conditions suitable for Lemurian existence. Sarah's scientific mind was already racing, noting how terrestrial plants seemed to be thriving despite the clearly altered atmospheric conditions. This is incredible, she breathed, reaching out to touch a familiar-looking fern that seemed to be glowing from within. How did you achieve this level of integration? That, Zara's mental voice held a note of pride, is precisely why we need your expertise. We've managed to create temporary stability through energy manipulation, but achieving permanent biological adaptation remains beyond our current understanding. The next few hours were a blur of introductions and orientations. Sarah met 3 other Lemurians, Quirks, their botanical specialist whose form rippled like Aurora Borealis, Bynn, a quantum mechanics expert who existed primarily as a complex mathematical pattern in the air, and Tila, their medical officer who could split into multiple smaller forms to attend to different tasks simultaneously. So, Sarah said, settling into what appeared to be a workstation designed specifically for human ergonomics, walk me through exactly what we're trying to achieve here. Tila's form coalesced beside her, projecting a holographic display of Lemurian genetic structure, if you could call it that. Instead of DNA's familiar double helix, Sarah found herself looking at something that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Our species evolved to exist in a state of quantum superposition, Tila explained. We are both matter and energy, existing in multiple states simultaneously. But our sun's deterioration is causing interference patterns that destabilize this balance. Like wave function collapse on a biological scale, Sarah mused, her mind already racing with possibilities. But why can't you just relocate? Surely there must be other compatible stars in the galaxy? If only it were that simple, Quirks chimed in, their form briefly merging with a nearby plant in what Sarah was beginning to recognize as a gesture of frustration. Our biology is intrinsically linked to our home star's specific radiation signature. Any significant change in that signature results in cascade failure of the quantum matrix that maintains your form, Sarah finished, understanding dawning. You're not just looking for a new home, you need to fundamentally change what you are. Precisely, BYNN's mathematical pattern pulsed with approval. And your work on extremophile adaptation suggests possible approaches we hadn't considered. Sarah spent the next several hours immersed in data, occasionally surfacing only to demand more coffee, which, true to Zara's word, was excellent, or to ask increasingly specific questions about Lemurian biology. The more she learned, the more fascinated she became. The Lemurians had evolved beyond traditional biological constraints, existing in a state that defied conventional physics. Yet this very advancement had become their greatest vulnerability. Their ability to maintain stable form depended on complex quantum interactions that were now being disrupted by their dying sun. I think, Sarah said finally, pushing back from her workstation and rubbing her tired eyes, I might have an idea. But it's either brilliant or completely insane. In our experience, Zara observed, those categories often overlap. Sarah pulled up her old research on extremophile adaptation. Look here, when we found bacteria surviving in conditions that should have been lethal, it wasn't because they developed complete immunity to hostile conditions. Instead, they developed mechanisms to rapidly repair damage as it occurred. She quickly sketched out a rough diagram. What if, instead of trying to prevent your quantum matrix from destabilizing, we focused on developing a way for it to instantly restabilize after disruption? The Lemurians gathered around her diagram, their forms shifting with what she hoped was excitement rather than horror at her suggestion. It would require completely redesigning our quantum regulatory systems, BYNN mused, their mathematical pattern becoming increasingly complex. The energy requirements would be enormous, Quirks added. But it's possible, Tila concluded, their multiple forms converging in excitement. Especially if we could incorporate elements of Earth biology's repair mechanisms. It's more than possible, Zara said quietly. It's elegant. Instead of fighting the inevitable collapse of our current form, we adapt to exist through cycles of collapse and reconstruction. Sarah felt a surge of excitement. Exactly. It's like, instead of trying to be an immovable object, you become an unstoppable force. Constant change becomes your new stability. The next few hours were a frenzy of theoretical modeling and preliminary tests. The Lemurians' ability to manipulate matter and energy at a quantum level, combined with Sarah's understanding of biological adaptation mechanisms, opened up possibilities that neither species had considered before. But as the artificial day cycle began to dim in the dome, Sarah noticed something odd. The plants they were using in their preliminary tests weren't just surviving the quantum manipulation, they were thriving. Some had begun to exhibit properties similar to Lemurian biology, developing a faint bioluminescence and showing signs of matter-energy fluctuation. Zara, she called out, her voice tight with excitement and concern, you need to see this. The senior researcher materialized beside her, their crystalline forms shifting to examine the modified plants. Fascinating. It appears the adaptation is working in both directions. But what does this mean? Sarah asked, watching as an ordinary earth fern briefly flickered into pure energy, before re-solidifying. Are we creating some kind of hybrid life form? Perhaps, Zara replied, their form pulsing with what Sarah had learned to recognize as intense interest. But more importantly, it suggests a solution we hadn't considered. Instead of forcing our biology to conform to new conditions, we create an entirely new form of life, Sarah finished, her mind racing with implications. Something that combines the best of both our species' survival strategies. She sat back in her chair, suddenly aware of how long she'd been working as exhaustion hit her all at once. This is bigger than just saving your species, isn't it? We're talking about the next step in evolution for both our peoples. Zara's form shifted to something almost human-like, though still crystalline and ethereal. Does that frighten you, Dr. Chen? Sarah looked around the dome, at the impossible garden where earth plants pulsed with quantum energy and Lemurian crystal formations had begun sprouting organic leaves. She thought about everything she'd learned in just one day, about how much more there was to discover. Frighten me? She grinned, reaching for her coffee cup. This is exactly why I became a scientist. When do we start the next phase of testing? As if in response, one of the hybrid plants suddenly burst into a shower of luminescent spores, each one flickering between matter and energy states like tiny stars. Sarah watched in wonder as they danced through the air, carrying the promise of something entirely new. The future, she realized, would be neither human nor Lemurian, but something gloriously, impossibly both. And she was here to help shape it. First, Zara said firmly, their form rippling with what Sarah now recognized as affectionate amusement, you will rest. Even quantum breakthroughs must wait for adequate human sleep cycles. Sarah wanted to protest, but a yawn betrayed her. Fine, she conceded. But wake me if anything exciting happens. Dr. Chen, Zara replied, their mental voice warm with humor, I suspect that from this point forward, everything that happens will be exciting. The hidden truth. Sarah woke to the sound of alarms. Not the harsh, mechanical screech she'd expect from a research facility, but a haunting crystalline resonance that seemed to vibrate through her very atoms. She stumbled out of her sleeping quarters to find the dome bathed in pulsing red light. Zara, she called out, her heart racing. What's happening? The Lemurian materialized beside her, their usually pristine crystalline form showing visible distortions. Our sun, they said, their mental voice strained. The degradation has accelerated beyond our projections. We have less time than we thought. Before Sarah could respond, a new figure materialized in the center of the dome, a Lemurian she hadn't met before, their form massive and crackling with barely contained energy. The other Lemurians immediately gathered around, their forms dimming in what Sarah recognized as a gesture of deference. High Coordinator Vex, Zara acknowledged, their mental voice formal. We weren't expecting your presence. The new arrival's form pulsed with barely contained urgency. The Council has reviewed your progress reports. They are concerned about the direction of your research. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Something in the High Coordinator's tone reminded her uncomfortably of every bureaucrat who'd ever tried to interfere with her work on Earth. Our preliminary results are promising, Zara defended. Dr. Chen's approach to adaptive evolution is too slow, Vex interrupted. The Council has approved implementation of the Convergence Protocol. The reaction was immediate. Kex's form scattered into disparate light particles before reforming. DYNN's mathematical pattern became so complex it hurt Sarah's eyes to look at it. Tila split into dozens of smaller forms, all vibrating with what appeared to be distress. The Convergence Protocol was deemed too dangerous, Zara protested. The risk of complete quantum collapse is preferable to certain extinction, Vex stated flatly. The Council has spoken. Would someone like to tell me what's going on? Sarah demanded, stepping forward. What's the Convergence Protocol? There was a moment of tense silence before Tila's forms converged to answer. It's a theoretical procedure for forced quantum evolution. Instead of gradually adapting our species, it would attempt to immediately transform our entire population into a new stable form. But it's never been tested, Kex added, their form flickering anxiously. The energy requirements alone could tear apart the fabric of space-time. Sarah's scientific mind raced ahead to the implications. You're talking about trying to simultaneously alter the quantum state of your entire species? That's insane. One miscalculation and you could. We are aware of the risks, Dr. Chen, Vex interrupted. But we are out of options. Our sun's deterioration has reached critical levels. Within days, it will begin emitting radiation that will make it impossible for any Lumerian to maintain stable form. Sarah looked at Zara, seeing the distress in their fluctuating crystalline structure. There has to be another way. Our hybrid experiments are fascinating but impractical for immediate implementation, Vex stated. The Council requires your research data for integration into the Convergence Protocol. Your service is appreciated, but your part in this is concluded. Like hell it is, Sarah snapped, surprising herself with her own vehemence. I didn't come here to watch you commit species-wide suicide. Show me the complete data on this Convergence Protocol. Now. To her surprise, Vex complied, projecting a complex series of quantum equations into the air. Sarah spent several minutes studying them, her mind translating the alien mathematics into something she could understand. When she looked up, her face was pale but determined. This won't work, she said flatly. Not as it's designed. You're trying to force a complete quantum transformation without accounting for biological stability. You'll create a cascade failure that will ripple through your entire species. Our calculations, Vex began. Are wrong, Sarah interrupted. You're thinking like pure energy beings. But what we've learned from our hybrid experiments is that you need a biological framework to stabilize the quantum matrix. She quickly pulled up data from their recent tests. Look at these plants. They're not just surviving quantum manipulation, they're creating new structures to contain and direct it. The dome fell silent as the Lumerians studied the data. Even Vex's imposing form seemed to dim slightly in contemplation. Even if you're right, Vex finally said, adapting the protocol would take time we don't have. Not necessarily, Sarah countered. She pulled up more data, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. What if we combined approaches? Use the Convergence Protocol's energy wave as a carrier for the hybrid adaptation we've developed. Instead of forcing a complete transformation, we create a quantum framework that allows your species to evolve naturally, but at an accelerated rate. That might work, BYNN's mathematical pattern shifted excitedly. If we modulate the quantum frequency to match the hybrid resonance pattern, we could guide the evolution instead of forcing it, Zara finished, their form brightening with hope. It would still be dangerous, but less dangerous than quantum suicide, Sarah pointed out. She turned to Vex. Give us 12 hours. Let us modify the protocol. If it doesn't work, you can still proceed with the original plan. Vex's form pulsed with what might have been reluctant admiration. You are either very brave or very foolish, Dr. Chen. Probably both, Sarah admitted with a grim smile. It's a human trait. Now, are you going to help us save your species the right way, or are we going to waste time arguing about it? The next 12 hours were a blur of frantic activity. Sarah worked until her vision blurred, sustained by coffee and the desperate knowledge that billions of lives hung in the balance. The Lumerians worked alongside her, their combined knowledge pushing the boundaries of what either species had thought possible. As the deadline approached, Sarah found herself standing before a holographic representation of their modified protocol. It was beautiful in its complexity, a perfect fusion of biological and quantum mechanics that could change the course of evolution itself. It's ready, she announced, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. But there's one thing I haven't told you. She took a deep breath. For this to work, it needs a biological template, a stable pattern for the quantum transformation to follow. And the only suitable template we have is human DNA. The implications hung in the air. If this worked, the Lumerians wouldn't just be saving themselves, they would be becoming something new, something partly human. You knew this from the beginning, didn't you? Vex asked, their form shifting thoughtfully. This was always going to be about more than just saving our species. Sarah met their gaze steadily. I knew it was a possibility. The question is, are you ready for what that means? Zara moved to stand beside her, their crystalline form brushing against her arm in what she'd come to recognize as a gesture of solidarity. We are ready to become something new, they said. The question is your species ready for what we will become? Sarah looked around the dome at the hybrid plants, at the impossible fusion of Earth and alien life they'd created. I guess we're about to find out. The alarms were still singing their crystalline warning, counting down to a moment that would change both their species forever. But for the first time since she'd arrived, Sarah felt truly certain they were doing the right thing. Well, she said, managing a tired smile, shall we evolve? The evolution wave. The modified convergence protocol hummed to life, filling the dome with a symphony of quantum harmonics. Sarah stood at the central control interface, her hands hovering over the holographic controls as she performed the final calibrations. Around her, the Lumerians had arranged themselves in a complex geometric pattern, their crystalline forms pulsing in synchronization. Final diagnostic complete, BYNN announced, their mathematical pattern weaving through the air. Quantum matrix stable at 97% efficiency. Biological template integration at optimal levels, Tila added, their multiple forms monitoring various displays. Human DNA sequence locked and ready for transmission. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. Zara, are you sure you want to be the first? We could test it on a smaller scale. The senior researcher's form shimmered with determination. My people stand ready to receive the evolution wave. I must show them the way. Their mental voice softened. Besides, I trust you, Sarah Chen. Before Sarah could respond, new alarms blared through the facility. Kex's form scattered in agitation before reforming. Energy spike detected from the home star. The radiation levels are climbing faster than predicted. We're out of time, Vex declared, their massive form crackling with tension. It must be now. Sarah's fingers flew over the controls, making split-second adjustments. Zara, get into position. Everyone else, maintain the quantum field stability. This is going to get interesting. Zara moved to the center of the geometric pattern formed by their fellow Lumerians. Their crystalline form seemed to pulse with both fear and excitement. I'm ready. Sarah initiated the sequence, watching as streams of data flowed across her screens. The hybrid plants around the dome began to glow, their quantum-infused cells resonating with the building energy. Phase 1 initiating. Quantum field harmonization in 3, 2, 1. A wave of pure energy erupted from the control interface, enveloping Zara's form. For a moment, their crystalline structure seemed to shatter into a million points of light. Sarah's heart stopped. Had she just destroyed her friend? But then something remarkable happened. The points of light began to coalesce, following the template encoded in the modified protocol. Sarah watched in awe as Zara's form rebuilt itself, but differently this time. Their crystalline structure remained, but now it was integrated with unmistakably organic elements. Strands of what looked like luminescent DNA spiraled through their form, creating a hybrid structure that was neither fully Lumerian nor human, but something gloriously new. Zara? Sarah called out, her voice trembling. How do you feel? The being that had been Zara opened eyes that now held swirling galaxies within their depths. When they spoke, their mental voice carried new depths of harmony. I feel complete. The quantum instability is gone, replaced by something more. Sarah, it's beautiful. Excited murmurs rippled through the assembled Lumerians as they witnessed the transformation. Even Vex's imposing form showed signs of astonishment. Vital signs stable, Tila reported, their forms dancing with excitement. Quantum matrix showing unprecedented levels of stability. The hybrid structure is self-maintaining. The biological framework is perfectly integrated, Kex added, their form merging briefly with nearby plants in shared resonance. It's creating new patterns we never thought possible. But before they could celebrate, the facility shook with a violent tremor. Warning signals screamed across every display. The star. DYNN's mathematical pattern became chaotic with alarm. The radiation surge is accelerating exponentially. We have minutes, not hours, before it reaches lethal levels. Sarah's mind raced. We need to scale up, now. The evolution wave has to reach your entire species before that radiation hits. She turned to Vex. Can you send the signal to begin mass gathering? The High Coordinator's form pulsed with newfound respect. It's already done. Our people are assembling at quantum nodes across the planet. But to reach them all simultaneously will require more power than we have, Sarah finished grimly. She looked at the hybrid plants surrounding them, their cells humming with quantum energy, then at Zara's transformed form. An idea struck her, brilliant, terrible, and possibly their only hope. The plants, she said quickly. They're not just decorative, are they? This whole dome is a quantum amplifier. Zara's new form brightened with understanding. Yes, but channeling that much energy through the biological matrix could kill me, Sarah nodded. But it's our only chance to save your species. She turned to the controls, already making modifications. The human DNA template needs a living conductor to reach full potential. It needs me. Sarah, no. Zara moved toward her, but Sarah had already initiated the sequence. The dome's hybrid ecosystem began to pulse with blinding energy. Sarah felt it flowing into her, every cell in her body becoming a conduit for the evolution wave. The pain was extraordinary, but so was the sensation of connection. She could feel every Lumerian on the planet, waiting for transformation. Through tears of agony, she saw Zara and the others moving to form a new pattern around her, their combined energy helping to stabilize the massive quantum surge building within her body. Together, Zara's voice echoed in her mind. We do this together. Sarah nodded, unable to speak as her body became pure energy. With the last of her human consciousness, she released the evolution wave, feeling it ripple out through the quantum nodes to touch every Lumerian in existence. The world turned white. When awareness returned, Sarah found herself floating in a sea of stars. No, not stars, transformed Lumerians, each one now a perfect fusion of crystalline energy and organic life. She looked down at her own hands and saw they too had changed, becoming something between human and Lumerian. What happened? She managed to ask, her voice now carrying the same harmonic qualities as the others. Zara's familiar presence enveloped her. You did not just save us, Sarah Chen. You evolved with us. The template needed an anchor in both forms, a bridge between what we were and what we could become. You became that bridge. Sarah tried to process this as she watched the transformed Lumerians adapting to their new forms, experimenting with their expanded abilities. Some were shifting seamlessly between energy and matter, others were creating beautiful hybrid structures that defied physics as she had known it. So I'm not human anymore? You are what we all are now, Vex's voice joined them, filled with wonder rather than authority. Something new. Something that can survive not just our son's death, but perhaps help guide both our species into a new era. The implications were staggering. She had not just saved an alien species, she had helped create an entirely new form of life. The scientist in her was already burning with questions, eager to explore the possibilities of their new existence. A wave of distortion rippled through space as their dying sun released another burst of radiation. But this time, they didn't fear it. Their new hybrid forms absorbed the energy, transformed it, used it to grow stronger. What now? Sarah asked, watching as her transformed colleagues began to experiment with their new abilities. Zara's form intertwined with hers, sharing memories and possibilities in a way their old forms never could have managed. Now, my dear friend, we explore. We learn. We grow. And perhaps, we help both our species understand that the next step in evolution isn't about becoming more powerful. It's about becoming more connected, Sarah finished, feeling the truth of it in every particle of her new existence. Well then, shall we get started? We have two worlds to introduce to each other. Around them, the hybrid plants from the dome had somehow survived the transformation, spreading through space like a living network, ready to help terraform new worlds for their new species. The future stretched out before them, full of impossible possibilities. Sarah Chen, first human-Lemurian hybrid, looked out at the cosmos with new eyes and smiled. The real adventure was just beginning. Bridges between worlds. 1 year after the Great Evolution, as humans had taken to calling it, Sarah stood before the United Nations General Assembly. Her hybrid form, now capable of maintaining a mostly human appearance despite its quantum nature, shimmered slightly under the harsh lights. Behind her, Zara and a delegation of transformed Lemurians hovered in their crystalline organic forms, a stunning display of what humanity and alien life could become together. Distinguished representatives of Earth, Sarah began, her voice carrying harmonic undertones that made the translators' jobs unnecessary. 1 year ago, I was a scientist working late in my kitchen. Today, I stand before you as living proof that our species need not remain bound by the limitations of our birth forms. The assembly hall was packed, with additional holographic projections allowing billions worldwide to witness this historic moment. After months of careful preparation and smaller-scale revelations, it was time for the full truth to be shared with Earth. The Lemurian crisis that brought us together has passed, she continued, gesturing to her transformed companions. But what we discovered in solving it was far more significant than mere survival. We found a path to voluntary evolution, to a form of existence that combines the best of both our species. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Sarah could sense the mix of fear, wonder, and anticipation in the room. She had expected this. It was, after all, a very human reaction to unprecedented change. I know many of you fear what this means, she acknowledged, her form shifting slightly to project reassuring patterns of light. You worry that this represents the end of humanity as we know it. But I stand before you as proof that human consciousness, human emotions, and human values can survive and thrive in this new form. Zara floated forward, their hybrid form casting prismatic patterns across the chamber. We do not come to replace humanity, they added, their mental voice reaching every mind in the room. We come to offer a choice. A path to voluntary transformation for those who wish to explore existence beyond current physical limitations. Sarah nodded, triggering the holographic displays they had prepared. The assembly watched in awe as images appeared showing the achievements of the past year, hybrid colonies sprouting on Mars, making the red planet habitable in weeks rather than centuries, quantum networks allowing instant communication across solar systems, medical breakthroughs as hybrid biology revealed new ways to heal and enhance human life. But perhaps most importantly, Sarah continued, we've discovered something extraordinary about consciousness itself. She gestured, and new images appeared, intricate patterns of quantum energy interacting with human brainwaves. In our hybrid form, we found that consciousness isn't limited to individual bodies. We can share thoughts, memories, and experiences while maintaining our individual identities. We've discovered that consciousness itself might be a quantum phenomenon, and in understanding it, we may finally begin to understand our place in the universe. A hand raised in the audience, the representative from Kenya. Dr. Chen, you speak of choice, but what of the implications? What of those who choose not to transform? Will they be left behind? Sarah smiled, appreciating the directness of the question. On the contrary, Madam Representative. The existence of hybrid beings has already benefited traditional human society in countless ways. She brought up more data. Agricultural yields doubled by hybrid farming techniques, clean energy solutions derived from quantum biological processes, medical treatments that could cure previously terminal conditions. We don't seek to create a divide between transformed and untransformed humans, she explained. We seek to build bridges. Every person who chooses to transform becomes a new connection between our species, a new perspective that enriches both forms of existence. Dex, who had become something of a diplomat between the old and new forms of life, moved forward. Their once intimidating presence now radiated a sense of peaceful purpose. Consider the history of your species, they suggested. Every major advancement, from the first use of tools to the development of agriculture to the Industrial Revolution, was met with fear and resistance. Yet each step helped humanity grow, not diminish. Sarah could sense the mood in the room shifting from apprehension to cautious optimism. She decided it was time for the final revelation. "What we propose is the establishment of transformation centers," she announced, facilities where those who wish to explore hybrid existence can do so safely and reversibly. This last point caused a stir. They hadn't revealed this capability before. Yes, reversibly. Our latest breakthrough allows consciousness to move between human and hybrid forms, allowing individuals to experience both modes of existence before making a permanent choice. The assembly erupted in excited discussion. Sarah felt Zara's presence brush against her consciousness, sharing their satisfaction at the response. They had expected resistance, perhaps even hostility, but the human capacity for adaptation was proving itself once again. There will be challenges ahead, Sarah acknowledged once the commotion had settled. Legal frameworks to establish, ethical guidelines to develop, new forms of governance to consider. But today, we stand at a threshold. Not of ending who we are, but of expanding what we can become. She raised her hand, letting her form shift to its fully hybrid state, a dazzling display of crystalline organic beauty that drew gasps from the audience. "I stand before you as proof that humanity doesn't end with transformation, it evolves, it grows, it reaches new heights. We can remain human in our values, our loves, our hopes and dreams, while exploring potentials we never imagined possible." The response was overwhelming. Representatives stood, applauding, while others rushed forward with questions. Sarah felt the weight of the moment, the historic significance of this bridge between worlds they were building. Later, as she stood with Zara on the roof of the UN building, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors their new eyes could appreciate in ways their old forms never could, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them here. "Do you ever miss being fully human?" Zara asked, their forms shimmering with genuine curiosity. Sarah considered the question, feeling the quantum energy flowing through her hybrid form, sensing the countless connections to both transformed and untransformed life around her. "I miss aspects of it," she admitted. "The simplicity, sometimes. The clarity of having just one perspective at a time." She smiled, letting her form release patterns of light that expressed her contentment. "But I wouldn't go back. We're not just building bridges between species anymore, Zara. We're building bridges between different ways of being alive. And that," Zara agreed, their form harmonizing with hers, "is the greatest evolution of all." As night fell over New York, the first stars becoming visible in the darkening sky, hybrid forms could be seen floating among the buildings, their bioluminescent patterns creating new constellations among the city lights. On rooftops and in parks, humans gathered to watch and wonder, some already making plans to visit the first transformation centers, others content to remain as they were while embracing the changes this new era would bring. The great experiment was just beginning, but the first steps had been taken. Humanity had been offered not an ending, but a new beginning, a chance to evolve not through blind chance or necessity, but through conscious choice and understanding. Sarah Chen, bridge between worlds, watched it all unfold with the patience of one who had touched the infinite and returned to share its wonders. The future was uncertain, but it was bright with possibility, shimmering with the combined potential of two species becoming something greater together. And somewhere in the vast cosmos, new hybrid seeds were taking root on distant worlds, preparing the way for whatever remarkable evolution would come next.